Okay, I want to welcome you as the first visitors to the new Ellicott Mills Childrens Museum, affectionately known as EMCM. The Name Weir Building seems to be sticking, but the Weirs only owned it for a short time, and then when they left it to the county, it became known as the Weird Building. So we would like to get it back to being the Children's Museum. Here I say it's opening April 23rd. That's the first official day that it's open to the public, but we will be having our dedication on the evening of April 22nd, all things considered. So let's see what's going on inside. Unfortunately, we can't really get inside because the construction is still going on. So you're going to have to use your imagination here a little bit. Let me just back up a little bit. We're talking about going forward, but I'm going to move back for a brief moment. About 10 years ago, Ann Schoenhut called me and asked if she could take me out to lunch. And I thought, oh, how nice. Well, she had an ulterior motive, and her enthusiasm was contagious. I had so many things going on. I did not need another responsibility. But by the time I left lunch, I agreed, yeah, I'll go on the board of the Historical Society. Yes, I'll be on the education committee, because Anne had this dream of turning this very derelict, but very important old building into a museum for children. We spent the first year going around to all the surrounding counties, visiting their children's museums and getting ideas for what this might become. And let's step inside and see what it is becoming. If you enter, you'll be going through a time machine. We're focusing on the years from 1790 to 1830. The school was actually used, we know, as a Quaker school from 1820 to 1824. The Quaker school had been on the other side of the river, other side of Main Street, had boys and girls, boys on one floor, girls on the other. It became too crowded, so they moved the boys over to this building. There is a lot of evidence that it had been used as a school even prior to that, but the boys came back in 1820 and stayed until Rock Hill College was built in 1824. So as you enter, and you're entering the early 19th century, you'll come through a garden. You'll probably first go into the education room, the school room, which will be a Quaker school room. Then you'll enter a commerce area, which will be the Ellicott store. We're currently looking for the name of a family on old census records, a Mill family, that we can actually have this be their great room, where their family conducted all of its activities. And then there'll be an exhibit about the Mills and a fully functional bathroom, which this building never had before. And so let's take a look at some of these areas. Okay, whoops, it went one too far. Okay, we'll start in the Quaker schoolroom. Because I can't show you what it will really look like, I just have this simple schematic, which shows that we will have desk bench combinations, which are horribly uncomfortable. They had very straight backs. I guess they had to keep the boys awake and attentive. The teacher will be on the typical teaching stage. We'll have a little work table in the back, and we do have several neat display items, a list of the Quaker testimonies, which was always at the front of a schoolroom. Also, a map of the period, which I actually found in Scotland, a map of Maryland from that era, and some very early math lithos. We also have a wonderful collection of old textbooks. The one rule in this museum, by the way, lots of museums have signs that say do not touch. The rule in this museum is everything is to be touched. We will have a basket of white gloves for people touching the old school books. Okay, we'll move into the Ellicott store. The Ellicott store sold everything. They had those hand-forged nails. They have all those oysters, which JD Slack has been dutifully eating for us. So we will have oyster shells to put on our barrel. They sold fabrics. They sold china. They sold just about everything, never had anything prepackaged. Everything had to be weighed by the storekeeper. The storekeeper also served as the postmaster. He would weigh the letters. decide how much he would charge for them. There was no consistency. There were no postage stamps. He would just write a little thing in the upper right-hand corner of the envelope that the mailing had been paid for, and the customer would be on their way. Also, at that post office table, there is a legend that Benjamin Banneker, as a young boy, 8, 9 years old, could already read and write. And he would come down there and read letters coming in for illiterate mill workers, and then write their letters in response. So we're going to have some activities where kids will actually sit at the table and have an adult dictate a letter to them. And then general stores always had a game table. Usually checkers. We're going to have a checkerboard there. We're also going to have some dominoes. It was a place for the community to get together and meet. We'll move on through the doorway into the family great room. Okay, great rooms in our modern houses are these huge rooms. The great room in an old house was very, very tiny, particularly in a mill worker's house. It's centered around the hearth. It was the only room in the house that was actually heated. That's why there's a bed in the room. If a family member were ill or a new baby had just been born, there was a spot for the recovering person to stay in the room that had the heat. But like I said, all activities took place there. Food was prepared, food was eaten, things were cleaned up, tools were sharpened, all the spinning and the winding of the yarn and such took place there. It was basically where the family lived. So we're trying to represent all of those activities. Most of the furnishings are multifunctional. They had such a small room that they had to have a settle, which is a bench, but you're ready for the meal. So you flip the back of the bench over, it becomes a table. The cradle can become a bench when there's no baby in the house. So we really looked for those multifunctional furnishings. And from there, you'll step into a display about the mills. We couldn't actually have a mill, but we have a display about the mills so that we can read about them and honor the fact that they were the purpose for Ellicott Mills. And they were basically a grist mill, which brings us to the garden. Bob Glasscock, who's a master gardener, is taking over the work on the garden. One of his dreams is to have a little wheat field, and kids can actually pick the wheat and then bring it inside and grind it. With the help from the Patapsco Heritage Greenway, we've gotten a grant that will help us realize a garden, and also Clark's Hardware and Planted Earth Landscaping have been very good about donating their time and services. The hope is for the garden to reflect about the year 1804, because Bob Glasscock found in 1804 Bartram's seed catalog. So we know what they were growing, which was basically local native plants. So that's what we're aiming for. But to get ready for our dedication ceremony, we had the Boy Scouts from Troop 75 come and dig out a couple of feet along the sidewalk on either side. And then a few weeks later, Bob led us in planting over 300 bulbs. Now he researched them carefully, and these are all guaranteed to be blooming on the 22nd of April. So fingers crossed, that is exactly what's going to happen. Okay, we had to start acquiring all the furnishings. So the first thing we did was put it out to all of you. Probably you remember receiving a lengthy email that had these attachments, what we were looking for each room that would reflect that 1790 to 1830 timeframe. We put little illustrations so people would know exactly what we were looking for. And then as the items came in, we indicated in red on our sheets what we had received, and it was incredible. This just happens to be one from the great room. And then also for each room, we had a second sheet of just the little things that we needed. And here you can see that almost everything came in. Something like crocks, I didn't put names on because we received so many. The pottery, we received so many. So virtually everything on this sheet was donated, and that's the case with the other rooms as well. So thank you, everybody. And then there were some things that weren't donated, so we had to hit the antique shops. The antique dealers were wonderful. When they heard what we were doing, they were wonderful about reducing their prices and giving us fantastic discounts. So we've acquired just, the only thing we still need is a blackboard, and our Franklin stove for the general store is out on loan for the next 4 years. So we really could use a Franklin stove. And if anybody has a real piece of slate, we could use a blackboard. Okay. Yesterday, as I was putting this together, it occurred to me that several people were working on things even at that moment for the Children's Museum. This is Dr. Mark Fratkin, who in his basement workshop, which is an incredible place, tells me that what he is doing here, and I have to quote this, is fitting the top of the shelf center support mortise to a tenon joint. This will evolve into the counter for the general store. Mark and his friend Jack Spencer, at no expense to us except for the lumber and the hardware, made 4 bench desk combinations for the schoolroom, and also 2 additional benches. And then Mark made a bookcase for the schoolroom. Those are already in our possession, and he is hard at work on the counter. Over at my house, my husband yesterday was working at rehabilitating, reconditioning the top of an old desk, which happens to have 26 little cubbies, perfect for the alphabet, in the post office area. And then across town still further, we had 2 of our favorite Girl Scouts, Reagan and Jocelyn, who are working with their moms, getting things ready for the general store. You can see they've made a thread rack. They're rolling fabric onto cardboard pieces to have fabric for sale in the fabric department of the general store. And in the lower picture, the girls are making hardtack. They've taken home several of the apothecary jars that were donated, and they're filling them with coffee beans, tea, sugar. And I had hardtack on the list. They made the hardtack. I'm a Swede. I grew up on hardtack. I didn't even know you could make it. I thought you bought it. Okay, and Betsy Grader yesterday, all these pictures were sent to me yesterday, by the way, as the people were doing the work. Betsy Grader is using fabric that is a reproduction of an 1820 fabric to make the curtains for the great room. And she informed me yesterday evening that they are done and ready for pickup. And while we're talking about fabric, another incredible person, Catherine Blacka, made us 2 quilts, all out of period fabrics, reproduction fabrics from that 1790 to 1830 era. She made 2 quilts for the bed in the great room, one to hang over the end and one to be actually on the bed. She made a little quilt for the cradle, and then she said she had to do something with the scraps, so she made another cradle quilt, which we will use as a window covering in the restroom, which overlooks the front porch. Okay, so we get all these things together. What are we going to use them for? Well, every Sunday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 1 to 5, we will be open for drop-ins. Mom and dad, grandma and grandpa can bring the kids by. No appointments or anything necessary. It's purely on a drop-in basis. Oops. And groups such as scout groups or church groups or homeschool groups, small private schools, can also make appointments to come on Saturday mornings or really anytime on Friday for an experience for their group. And we'll meet with the leaders beforehand and see what they want. If the scouts are working for a particular badge or patch, I'm sure we can fulfill that need. You won't be required to do any laundry when you come. Okay. Over the last few years, in order to know what we were going to do with all of these people when they came to, actually, did I skip a slide here? Yes, I did. There, sorry about that. For the last several years, we've been having regular activities, bringing kids to the museum. We did it the first Saturday of every month in, I believe it was 2018. We would market test a certain theme, and we would usually have like a PowerPoint to introduce them and elicit some discussion, and then they would break into groups and visit 3 different tables for experiences related to the theme. So we market tested a lot of things, and I have a few pictures of that. Our EdCom, the Education Committee team, led this, and the little girls in the top corner, one of those you just saw working on the general store items at home yesterday. Here we had a spring planting activity, and they made little lambs. The other picture has kids making valentines for the birds. Valentine's Day originally was for the birds, so it's very appropriate to show some love to our feathered friends on Valentine's Day. Sometimes we had activities at the museum here, or at Miller here, and Schoenhut is working with a group of kids on a Native American, Howard County Native American project. Sometimes things were wonderful, but we just decided we can't continue to do them. This is a tea party. We had 2 tea parties, and we decided they were so work intense, and we don't know if we'll have space in the new museum to do them. So some things we tried and we may not follow through with. And just for fun, I put together a chart with the 3 main rooms, the schoolroom, great room, and general store, took some of the themes we had done and found an activity that we did for that theme that would fit into every store. Every month we'll have a special activity that is just for that month, and we'll actually have 2 of them. One will be a hands-on, make it, craft it kind of activity, and the other one will be a paper and pencil kind of activity. Okay, this was only limited by the size of the paper. I mean, we could have gone on, and Anne has come up with another list of things. So we have a lot more things. They're all in tubs at our houses. We're very anxious to get them over to the workroom and put them to use. Okay, to do that, we were going to need volunteers, particularly volunteer docents and volunteers to get all the activities ready to go. And so back on October 9th, we had a volunteer fair, and we were very pleased that over 50 people came and signed up to volunteer. And here are those 2 girls again. They were the hit of the volunteer fair. They showed what even middle schoolers could do. The girls crafted our checkerboard. They made the checkers using a radial arm saw. They made a set of wooden dominoes. They made the Jacob's ladders, 4 Jacob's ladders. If you've ever tried to make one, it's about impossible. Oh, they sewed bags to put all these things into. They made 4 cloth balls, 4 cloth dolls, all the blocks you see down in front, a bag of clay marbles. And they've worked on a lot of things for the general store. They put together a sewing basket. I now have them trying to do some cross-stitch samplers. We'll see if they master that one. Okay, we've been calling together small groups of the people who signed up to volunteer to go over their responsibilities and possibilities with them, kind of by the theme of what they wanted to volunteer for. Here we're meeting with some of the reenactors and the people who volunteered to do research. And we've been doing this on Thursday mornings, and we have a few more coming up on Saturday mornings. And Fran Schellenberger has been working with Linda Kissack and Phyllis to put together a docent manual for the docents, which will include all the things like where is the fire alarm, what do you do for an emergency, how do you get in, all the nitty gritty. But it will also have the activities that are available all the time in each of the rooms. We're trying to have at least 5 or 6 hands-on activities that anybody who walks in on one of those Saturday or Sunday afternoons can do, and it will be there and ready for them. And then, like I said, there'll be a special activity of the month also. And we also, for each room, have a list of things for the docents to point out to visitors. Things like, why don't we have a cash register? Well, they weren't invented until during the Civil War. Instead, we have a spike, which is like a long, heavy nail that comes up, and receipts and money owed were put onto the spikes. So there are lots of little interesting tidbits that we would like the docents to be aware of. And we hope that you are looking forward to bringing the kids to enjoy your new museum. And we also want to point out that you don't have to have kids to come. You can bring yourself and enjoy it without children. So we are very excited that this is about to come to fruition and we can start our activities soon. Thank you.